He was the last Tsar of Russia. She was the granddaughter of Queen Victoria. Their wedding took place 1 week after a funeral, and their love story ended with 17 bullets in a basement at 2 in the morning. This is the marriage that destroyed an empire. In the golden summer of 1889, a 16-year-old princess from a tiny German duchy arrived in St. Petersburg and, without meaning to, set fire to the future of Russia. Her name was Princess Alex of Hesse-Darmstadt, granddaughter of Queen Victoria, raised in a quiet palace where the loudest noise was the turning of hymn book pages. She was tall, slender, painfully shy, with pale gold hair that fell to her waist and eyes the color of a winter sea. She came only because her older sister Ella was marrying Grand Duke Sergei Alexandrovich, uncle of the Tsarevich. Nicholas first saw her across a crowded ballroom at Peterhof. He was 21, slight, clean-shaven, already wearing the weight of an empire on shoulders that were not broad enough. He wrote in his diary that night, "I have fallen completely in love with Princess Alex. God grant that she loves me too." For 6 weeks, they were inseparable. They rode on the palace lake, picked lilies in the lower gardens, danced until dawn, and one afternoon, hidden behind a cascade of wisteria, he carved their entwined initials, N and A, into the wooden railing of a little bridge. Alex laughed when she saw it, kissed his cheek, and then sailed home to Darmstadt without promising anything. Nicholas was left staring at the empty Neva, as if his heart had been carried away on the same ship. For 5 long years, he waited. He refused every princess Europe offered. Princess Helene of France, Princess Margaret of Prussia, half a dozen Russian Grand Duchesses. His mother, the glittering Dowager Empress Marie, despised the idea of a quiet German girl on the Russian throne and paraded beautiful candidates in front of him like horses at auction. His father, Alexander III, the bear who crushed Polish rebellions with one hand and lifted his children with the other, roared that no Lutheran would ever rule over Orthodox Russia. Queen Victoria herself wrote long letters warning Alex that the Russian court was a nest of vipers, that winters lasted 8 months, that empresses were poisoned or exiled. Alex answered every proposal with the same gentle refusa. She loved Nicholas. Her letters prove it. But converting to Orthodoxy felt like betraying her dead father and the simple Lutheran faith she had been taught to cherish. She prayed in the little chapel at Darmstadt until her knees bruised, begging for guidance. Nicholas wrote to her almost daily, sometimes twice a day, filling pages with pressed violets and desperate pleas. He sent Fabergé eggs, pearls, and a diamond brooch shaped like a forget-me-not. He even knelt in the snow outside his mother's window at Gatchina until she agreed to help. Love had turned the gentle heir into a man who would not take no for an answer. Then everything changed. In the autumn of 1894, Alexander III caught a chill while hunting. Within weeks, the strongest man in Europe was swollen, breathless, dying. On his deathbed at Levadia in the Crimea, he summoned Nicholas, pressed Alex's photograph into his son's hand, and whispered with the last of his strength, "Marry the girl you love." 3 days later, the giant emperor was dead. Nicholas, suddenly Tsar at 26, wept like a child on the empty bed. Messengers raced across Europe. Alex received the news at Darmstadt, closed her bedroom door, and did not come out for 2 days. When she emerged, her eyes were red, But her decision was made. She boarded the train to Crimea, wearing deep mourning black. At every station, Russian officers saluted, peasants crossed themselves, children threw flowers. Nicholas met her at Simferopol station on a cold October afternoon. He was thinner, pale, already wearing the invisible crown that would crush him. When he saw her step down from the carriage, he bowed low and kissed her hand, exactly as protocol demanded. Alex blushed crimson, then lifted his face and kissed him properly in front of generals, ladies-in-waiting, and an entire regiment. Russia gasped. The empire had its future empress, and she had arrived, ready to burn the world for love. Nicholas was crowned Tsar Nicholas II on 26 May 1896 in Moscow, amid splendor that dazzled the world. Alexandra, newly baptized into the Orthodox faith as Alexandra Fyodorovna, walked beside him beneath a canopy of cloth of gold, while the great bells of the Kremlin shook the sky. The diamond crown of Catherine the Great was placed on her head and left purple bruises for days. At the sacred moment, she swayed under its weight. Nicholas steadied her with a hand no one was supposed to see. Millions cheered along the route. Then disaster struck. At Kadinka Field, outside Moscow, the traditional gifts of beer and souvenirs turned into a stampede. More than 2,000 peasants were crushed or trampled to death. Nicholas wanted to cancel the festivities. His uncles insisted the coronation ball must go on. That night, Nicholas and Alexandra danced while bodies still lay in the field. Russia never forgot the blood under the celebrations. They escaped whenever they could to the Alexander Palace at Tsarskoye Selo, a quiet pink building hidden among birch trees. There they lived almost like ordinary people. Nicholas chopped wood. Alexandra embroidered. They read English novels aloud by the fire. They called each other Nicky and Sonny, held hands under the dinner table, and closed the doors to the world. 4 daughters arrived in quick succession. Olga in 1895, Tatiana, 1897, Maria, 1899, Anastasia, 1901. Each birth was greeted with public disappointment because Russia needed a male heir. Alexandra smiled bravely in photographs, but cried alone. The court whispered that the German empress was barren of sons. She retreated deeper into religion, filling her rooms with icons, burning incense, praying for hours on her knees. Society called her cold, haughty, foreign. Nicholas defended her against everyone, even his own mother. Then, on 12 August 1904, after 10 years of marriage and nationwide prayers, cannons boomed across St. Petersburg, announcing the birth of a son. Tsarevich Alexei was perfect. Blue eyes, golden hair, the image of his mother. The empire celebrated for weeks. Joy lasted exactly 6 weeks. One morning, the baby bled from the navel and would not stop. Doctors recognized the dread disease at once, hemophilia, the curse carried by Queen Victoria's female descendants. A scratch could kill him. A fall could end the dynasty. Alexandra collapsed. From that day forward, her life became one long prayer to keep her son alive. She dismissed doctors who spoke of caution and searched instead for miracles. Nicholas watched the woman he loved disappear into terror and superstition, while the empire began to call his wife the German witch, who brought cursed blood to the throne. By 1905, Russia was coming apart. Defeat against Japan. Bloody Sunday when troops fired on unarmed petitioners. Strikes, mutinies, bombs in the streets. Nicholas issued the October Manifesto, promising freedom, then quietly took most of it back. At home, Alexandra rocked a bleeding child and begged God for help. Into this chaos walked Grigory Efimovich Rasputin, a Siberian peasant with burning eyes and the smell of earth on his skin. He was introduced to the desperate parents in October 1905. Alexei was bleeding internally. Doctors had given up. Rasputin knelt by the bed, prayed in a low voice, and the bleeding slowed, then stopped. Alexandra fell to her knees and kissed his dirty hands. From that moment, Rasputin became untouchable. He came and went from the palace as he pleased, sat by Alexei's bed at night, sent telegrams from thousands of miles away that somehow arrived just when the boy began to bleed again. Alexandra wrote him letters that began, "My only friend, my savior sent by God." She believed he was a holy man. Society believed he was her lover. Ministers were appointed or dismissed because Rasputin whispered in the Empress's ear. Grand dukes plotted to kill him. Nicholas, torn between love for his wife and disgust at the scandal, protected the monk because Alexei lived longer when Rasputin prayed. Photographs show Rasputin drunk in restaurants, while the Tsarina knelt in her mauve boudoir, clutching his latest telegram. By 1916, half the country believed the mad monk ruled Russia through the Empress's bedroom. On the night of 29 December 1916, Prince Felix Yusupov, one of the richest men in Russia and married to the Tsar's niece, invited Rasputin to the Moika Palace. He offered poisoned cakes and wine, then shot him when the poison failed. Rasputin crawled across the snow-covered courtyard and was shot again. Still alive, he was wrapped in a carpet and dropped through a hole in the ice of the Neva. The autopsy found water in his lungs. He had drowned. Alexandra received the news at Tsarskoye Selo, collapsed screaming, and had to be carried to bed. She never smiled again. 2 months later, the empire itself collapsed. Nicholas abdicated on a frozen railway siding at Pskov, while his wife and children waited under guard. The love story that began with carved initials on a bridge had become the curse that killed a dynasty. For 16 months, the Romanov family was moved across a Russia that no longer wanted them. First, the gentle house arrest at Tsarskoye Selo, where lilacs still bloomed and the girls played with their dogs in the park. Then exile to Tobolsk in Siberia, a quiet town where Nicholas chopped wood and Alexandra taught the children Bible lessons by candlelight. Finally, in April 1918, the harsh transfer to Ekaterinburg and the grim Ipatiev house, renamed the House of Special Purpose. Windows were painted over, jewels sewn into corsets and underwear, letters smuggled in loaves of bread. Guards stole food, scrawled obscene drawings on the walls, mocked the former empress when she prayed. Alexei could no longer walk. Nicholas carried his son on piggyback rides around the tiny garden. Every evening the family gathered for prayers. Then Nicholas read aloud while Alexandra embroidered. They celebrated their 24th wedding anniversary on 26th of November, 1917, with a tiny cake baked by the cook and wildflowers picked from cracks in the pavement. Alexandra wrote in her diary, "One can live on love alone." Nicholas wrote to his sister, "My wife is braver than all of us put together." The girls, now young women, kept their parents' spirits up with jokes and songs. Anastasia smuggled notes to supposed friends outside. None ever came to help. By July 1918, civil war raged. White armies were approaching Ekaterinburg. Moscow decided the Romanovs must not be rescued alive. On 16th July, a new commandant arrived with secret orders. That night, the family went to bed early, sensing the end. Alexandra placed her most precious photograph, Nicholas kissing her hand on the day she arrived in Russia, inside her corset next to her heart. They fell asleep, holding hands across the narrow prison beds, exactly as they had on their wedding night. And at 2 o'clock in the morning of 17 July 1918, the family was woken and told to dress quickly. They were being moved for their safety. Nicholas carried Alexei downstairs. Alexandra walked with her head high, clutching her little dog Jimmy. The girls wore dresses bulging with hidden jewels. Dr. Botkin, the cook, the maid, and the footman followed loyally. They were led to a small basement room with one barred window and told to wait for cars. 11 prisoners stood in 2 rows, while 11 executioners filed in. The commandant read the death sentence in a flat voice. Nicholas stepped in front of his son and asked, "What? What?" Then the guns began. Nicholas was hit first, multiple times in the chest. He fell, still trying to shield Alexei. Alexandra had time to raise her hand in the sign of the cross before 2 bullets struck her head. The girls screamed as smoke filled the room. Diamonds in their corsets deflected the first volley. Bayonets and revolver shots finished the work. Alexei lay whimpering on the floor until the commandant shot him twice in the head. It took 20 minutes for the screaming to stop. The bodies were carried out to a truck, stripped, mutilated, burned with petrol and acid, and buried in a forest pit that stayed secret for 77 years. In 2000, the Russian Orthodox Church canonized the family as passion bearers. In 2008, DNA finally confirmed the bones. And in the Peterhof Gardens, the little wooden bridge still stands, protected now by glass. The carved initials N and A have weathered storms, revolutions, and time itself. Visitors leave white roses there every year on 17th July. Because once, in a world that no longer exists, a boy loved a girl so completely that he followed her from palaces to prison to a basement lit by 17 gunshots. Their marriage lasted 23 years, 11 months, and 21 days. It began with a kiss on a railway platform. It ended with a kiss in the smoke. And between those 2 kisses, an empire rose, ruled, bled, and fell forever.